Hello and welcome to the latest in our series of live career webinars brought to you by HOP. So HOP stands for the Hertfordshire Opportunities Portal. It is a website that has been created specifically for young people in schools in Hertfordshire to help you find out a range of different careers information and inspiration to help you make your next choices. So the purpose of these webinars is to give you the opportunity to hear directly from a professional working in an industry or an occupation that you are interested in and would like to find out about. So firstly, can I say well done for those of you that have come home from school today on Thursday afternoon and you obviously want to find out about careers in the fire and rescue service, and you've come home and you've logged on to watch this webinar. So I think that's really, really good that you've taken the time out of your day to do that. So to get the most out of this experience, what I'm going to recommend that you do is, as we talk to our panelists, who I'll introduce to you very shortly, if you have any questions for him or anything that you'd like to know a little bit more about, you can do that by typing in a question on your dashboard. So on your dashboard, you've got a questions tab. If you click on that, it opens out, a text box goes in there, type your question in, press submit. It'll only be visible to me, and then I will forward it on to James to answer for you. So it's a really good opportunity for you to do that. This webinar is being recorded, so if you can't stay throughout to the end of it, or if you can and you want to watch it back and you want to make some notes, it will be available on our HOP YouTube site. So if you look at our social media channels and platforms on your screen at the moment on the left hand side, specifically that YouTube one, that is where you can go to access all the previous webinars that we've run in the past. So I will give you a reminder of that. Just a bit of housekeeping, just to reassure you, we can't see or hear any of you that are in the audience at the moment, but hopefully you'll be able to see and hear us fine as well. So before I go on any further, I think it's really important that we introduce our webinar, who I'm delighted has joined us today. So good afternoon, James. Could you just give us a bit of an introduction to you and the Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service?
Hi Gareth, hi everyone out there in the online world. My name is James Bull. I'm a station commander in Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service. I've been in nearly 22 years now, so I've been around the block a little while. I was about 23, I think, when I joined, but there were younger people on my recruit squad. 18 is the minimum age, and there was a couple of 18-year-olds on my recruit squad. You'll be aware roughly of what we do in the fire and rescue service. Obviously the role has broadened hugely over the years, so it's not just fire, you know, hence why we're not called the fire brigade anymore. It's fire and rescue service, to incorporate all of the different activities that we do. So, you know, we've got our RTCs, which are road traffic collisions, you know, essentially vehicle crashes, planes, trains, hazardous materials. We do rescues from height, rescues from underground. We do literally everything. So it's not just fires. That's the front-facing bit that people see when we're going past them with flashing blue lights. But we do a whole host of things, and our firefighters are multi-skilled professionals. You know, they do trauma care. You know, sort of they're very close in skills to some paramedics, you know, so they're really multi-skilled now. We have specialist teams, rope rescue teams, water rescue teams. It's vast. We are jack of all trades.
Yeah, no, and James, you were saying to me earlier that there's, I think, 32 stations in Hertfordshire.
Yeah, give or take. We've lost a couple over the years, but yeah, it's in that ballpark. Yeah.
Sure. So essentially, everyone that's watching this at the moment who'll be attending a school in Hertfordshire, there will be a fire station pretty close to them that quite possibly they could drive past every day. And whilst we are specifically talking about Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue, because we're very Hertfordshire based here, so it's worth saying that the fire and rescue service is needed around the county, in other neighbouring counties as well. So if you kind of move away at some point and you want to join the fire and rescue service, there'll be homes for you up and down the country as well.
Yeah, so without going too in depth into statutory duties and things like that, we have we produce a community risk management plan, and that we have a statutory duty to provide fire and rescue cover across the whole county to our residents in our communities, to cover the whole of our county, and to do so within a certain time frame, to respond to incidents within a certain time frame. And we are bound by those and judged upon that data. And the government will inspect us to ensure that we're adhering to those targets. And equally, our neighbouring brigades, neighbouring fire and rescue services are the same. But that's not to say if, for example, if we have a fire over the border from Hertfordshire, in Bedfordshire, Essex, we neighbour Buckinghamshire, Berkshire, Essex, Cambridgeshire, London to the south. If there's something that our neighbours need assistance with, because some of our stations are closer because of where they're situated on the border, some of our stations are closer than theirs. So we will go over the border, and likewise they will come over the border into our area, and we assist each other in that way. It's a collaborative approach. So yeah, if you were interested in joining the fire and rescue service, it doesn't matter where you live, there'll always be a fire and rescue service that will need your services.
Sure. And James, just for context, I know you are actually in a fire station at the moment. Just explain where you are at the moment as well. And I should also say it's a working office as well. So whilst I don't think James is going to get called away to deal with anything should it happen, it's obviously it's a busy and a vibrant place that you're in at the moment.
So I'm not actually not currently sat on an operational fire station, but I am at our we call it JESA, Joint Emergency Services Academy. So it's essentially our training and development centre. So this is where we train all the recruits and probationers. This is where firefighters and operational crews come to training centre to be assessed on annual, to ensure they're compliant in certain skills, like their breathing apparatus and things like that. Incident commanders will get assessed on taking charge of incidents and things like that. And we also do a lot of sort of soft skill training up here for managers. So this is a very busy and vibrant place, and there's driver training up here and everything. So it's a very, very busy place. I worked here for 6 years at one point as a senior instructor, and it was a great place to be. Very busy, but no, it's not an operational fire station. I could get called out because I'm a what's called a flexi duty officer. So if our fire control, which is actually also based here at our training centre down the bottom compound, if they need to mobilise me to an incident, they will phone me on my mobile phone, and then I have a response vehicle outside. But I can essentially be anywhere around the county, but our operational stations will always have a crew there working on a shift system. So fire stations are open 365 days a year, 24 hours a day.
Sure. Okay. Well, look, James, let's start with your story first of all, because a couple of questions that came in during the initial registration were, when did you know you wanted to be a firefighter? And you told me quite a nice story about when you first, I think, realised that this was a career that you wanted to go into when you shared a room with your brother.
Yeah, I think I was about six or eight. I can't remember. It was pretty young, and because it was I remember it was in our first house when my brother and I shared a bedroom back then, and above his bed he had pictures of like fighter jets and things like that. He wanted to be a pilot, and I had pictures of fire engines. I wanted to be a firefighter. So yeah, that's sort of the earliest point at which I remember I wanted I was interested or attracted to the fire rescue service. But I think, to be honest, it was anything with blue flashing lights on at that time. When I got older, and I was quite an active, I was into my sport and things like that, and I wanted an occupation that would keep me active. And so I was essentially looking at things like the fire service, the police, the armed forces. Essentially, I would have ended up in one of those things. If it wasn't one, it would have been the other. So I was attracted to that life, if you like, or that perceived lifestyle. I didn't see myself as sort of an office type. You know, I wasn't looking for that type of career. So yeah, I remember quite a young age, but I didn't start making moves to do anything about that until sort of, you know, much later, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, can you look back at yourself as a youngster now and think, oh yeah, do you know what? Really, it was always set in the stars that I would go into the fire service. Were you the kid that always had to go and retrieve the football from the tree when up there at school, or were there other things that maybe some of your colleagues would all have in common?
I mean, I guess, yeah, I was active, I was sporty. You know, I later on when I started playing rugby and things like that, I thought I wanted to be a professional rugby player. That was I thought that's what would happen. You know, I was all set to become a household name. That's what I wanted. But when that didn't quite work out, I still wanted to make sure I had an active career. I knew the sort of life that I wanted to lead, and it wasn't sat around in an office. Not that there's anything wrong in that, but I just think you need to chase your dreams. And at the time I believed that this life and this occupation offered me more of the things that were suited to my personality and my likes and my needs at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a really good segue into the first couple of questions that I wanted to ask you, which is to try and really paint the picture of what it's actually like to be a firefighter. So tell us, first of all, what position would any new recruits come into when they join the fire and rescue service? And typically, what sorts of things would they be doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so everyone joins as a firefighter. We are, you know, the police have different entry schemes, and so you can come in at different levels. If you're a graduate and things like that, we are looking at that, but that would only be for sort of certain ranks, you know, middle management and above. But currently, if you're joining as a firefighter, everyone joins as a firefighter. You start as a probationary firefighter, and you go through your basic training, your phase 1 training, which everyone goes through, and that's actually one of the nice things about this job. I think sometimes, you know, so as an officer now, if I'm asking someone to do something like a probationary firefighter or something, it's nothing. I would never ask them to do something that I wouldn't have been prepared to have done myself, or I haven't done myself. So there is an element of, you know, we've all done that, we've all been there and done that, and that's quite a nice thing, I think, sometimes, because it does form a togetherness and a unity in a profession like this, that you've all had the similar experiences. So everyone joins as a firefighter, and over time we've evolved. When I joined, we were doing MVQs. That was sort of part of the probationary procedure. We've evolved, and we're now doing apprenticeships, and they've come back in favour, and they appear to be working really well. So currently, we run an apprenticeship scheme, and it's, you know, your phase 1 training is your basic training, essentially a training centre, and then if you successfully complete that, you'll pass out. We call it passing out, not fainting, but you have your pass out parade, and you get assigned to a station. So you get stationed somewhere around the county, and that's where we say, you know, the real learning starts. That's your phase 2. And that's when you're with experienced firefighters who will build upon your learning from basic training, and that's where you do your apprenticeship. That's where the real work starts, I guess, and the real learning takes place, because you're not just pretending anymore. You're not just simulating stuff. You're going out to live incidents now, so everything counts, you know, and there's nowhere to hide. You're straight into the pressure cooker. So, you know, it's not for everyone, but I do think if people have the right mindset and a can-do attitude, you can be a success. And you certainly don't have to be, you know, people have got this perception that you need to be some sort of super fit superhero. That's not the case. We need people from all, you know, all shapes and sizes, all walks of life, all different backgrounds, because, you know, when you have so many people from a wealth of different backgrounds and experiences, it brings a wealth of knowledge and experience that you can call upon in because we often have to think outside of the box, the things that we go to and the things that we deal with, and having people with a vast amount of experiences actually it really enriches your approach to things, and it enables you to think outside the box and utilize. Everyone has a strength. Everyone can do something that someone else can't. We've all got strengths and weaknesses, and you know, we recognize our weaknesses and we try and improve upon them. But everyone will have a strength. You'll all have a talent. You'll all be able to do something that someone else can't, and you should never forget that. We're all unique.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, tell us, just thinking around some of the stations around the county at the moment. So I'm nearest to Cheshunt Station at the moment, but there'll be people watching. It'll be near St Albans, Watford, Hemel, Stevenage. What sorts of things will the team who are on duty there at the moment be doing? I mean, how much of it is reactionary, waiting for that call to come? And if so, what do those call outs tend to be about typically?
Yeah, so it's completely unpredictable. This is probably one of the most common questions I get. You know, how many calls do you get a day? How long is a piece of string? It's one of them. You know, you could get none, you could get 20, 30. It's, you know, during the hot period we recently had a couple of months back, we were the busiest we've ever been in history over the course of 2 days, and that was the same for the whole country, to be fair. But so how many calls do we get? It's so many factors. But yeah, so generally speaking, you've got your day shift and your night shift, and that is what it sounds like. But it's not a case of people. You know, there's still this very old-fashioned perspective that we sit around playing sport and snooker and drinking tea, waiting for a call. You'd be very lucky to get 5 minutes to do that. Our shifts are ram-packed, and there's a schedule that we stick to. It has to remain fluid, obviously, because of the nature of the job, and we can get called out any minute, and so we have to sort of amend our working day accordingly. But there are things assigned. So from the moment you come on duty and you're given your duties for that day, you know, we'll have a parade, duty on parade, and you'll be nominated what you're doing, because each position on a fire engine denominates a different role for the day. So whether you're a BA wearer, BA engine control officer, driver, incident commander, etc., etc., everyone has a nominated role and specific duties to undertake. Then there's a lot of routine maintenance and testing of our equipment. Our equipment has to be maintained tip-top fashion and ready to operate at a moment's notice. We carry life-saving equipment, not only for ourselves, but for members of the public. So we have to know it's ready and working and operationally ready at all times. We have to be operationally ready and prepared ourselves. So we're always training. You know, there is a big emphasis on training. We are training, and we try and keep that as realistic as possible. Hence why we do live fire burns and things like that down at our training centre. We try and push the envelope to make training as realistic as possible, because that's where it's most beneficial. You know, and you know, we make no apologies for that. We have to push it quite close to the mark, because it would be remiss of us if we didn't. You know, we don't want to send people out unprepared for what they might face in the real world. So, you know, you get the terminology that we have to be like coiled springs, and there is an element of that, and there is always an element of downtime on stations. You know, it's not what you see on TV and films. You're not out the door on glamorous calls every 5 seconds. That's just not the case. But we are called out, and we are called out regularly, and when you are called out, you have to be ready to perform at a moment's notice, and there's nowhere to hide. Everyone has to be able to do their job, because everyone has a specific role, so no one else can do it for you. So we all have to be competent in what we're doing, and therefore that's why the heavy emphasis is on training. But we also have other statutory duties. We have to carry out inspections of buildings and ensure that legislation is being complied with, etc., etc. So the days and night shifts are ram-packed. You know, we are busy, and it's all centered around learning. So, you know, for example, our probationers and those that are coming out to do their apprenticeships from training centre will often do, you know, they might be tasked with a presentation on the night shift or whatever, and actually that's really good, not only for them, but for us that are a bit older in the tooth, longer in the tooth, because you know, you're getting someone that's fresh out of training centre who's got the most up-to-date training, and they've just, you know, and now they're teaching the old hands, if you like, and that's great for the experienced watchers as well, because they're always learning new things, and there's no harm in that. So, you know, whilst and it can be daunting as an apprentice. I remember when I was a probationer coming out to station, you think, you know, you don't know anything compared to these watches that you're coming onto. You know, they're sort of legendary, you know, guys and girls that have been there and seen it and done it all. But actually, you're a really valuable member from day one, because you're coming out equipped with all the latest knowledge, all the latest science, you know, all the latest techniques of how to deal with certain emergencies. So actually, you've got your place on the watch immediately, and you've got stuff to teach the older hands on the watch. So, you know, everyone is key. Everyone has their part to play in that team environment, and it is very much about that teamwork. You know, we all help each other.
Yeah, well, I mean, the teamwork sounds like it's a really positive part of the role, and it's something that's clearly embedded very well within the fire and rescue service. But what are the most enjoyable aspects of the role? What are the things that a firefighter would go home at the end of the day and think, wow, I'm really pleased that I've been involved in that, or that's something that would really give them a strong sense of worth and value?
Yeah, so you've got your obvious ones that, you know, again, probably coming from people's perceptions from TV and films and stuff, that, you know, you're coming out of a burning building and you saved a life. Now, obviously, yeah, that happens, and if you're involved in a rescue of that nature, and it's a good news story, then of course you're going to feel amazing. You know, that there's not much better feelings than that. But we can make a difference. It doesn't have to be that big heroic event. It can be, you know, you've just helped. You've done a home fire safety check on an elderly resident's house in the community, and you've given them some company, you've given them some fire safety advice and made them safer in their daily life, and you can see that they've got a lot from your visit and they've really benefited from it, and that, you know, that gives you a great feeling as well. So it's not just about that big heroic event. There's so many ways and areas in this profession that you can come home and think, it's about, you know, I try and think, have I added any value today? Have I made a difference today? And 9 times out of 10, you can pinpoint something in your shift that you've done. And even if it's not involving a member of the community, you know, if it's been a quiet day or whatever, maybe you've helped a colleague on station. You know, maybe you've spent time with a probationer and gone help them with their apprenticeship, or maybe you've learned something that, you know, on your next job will make you safer and make you more effective. You know, there's so many ways that we get there's not many jobs where you get that sense of pride and satisfaction, you know, than jobs like in the emergency services.
Yeah, I suppose, look, the flip question that we need to ask and people need to know about is, what are the challenging sides of the role that people perhaps wouldn't be aware of or don't always think about whilst they're thinking about applying?
Yeah, there's no hiding from it, and it would be silly to do so. You know, I'm sure the audience isn't naive enough to think we do see some horrible things. It's not for everyone. It's inevitable. That is the job. We are there in people's worst times of need. So we will see and do some horrible things, but someone's got to do it, and in that moment, the public need us, and that's quite a privilege. So, but that can be distressing. I won't hide away from that. It has caused me issues. It does cause people. It can cause mental health issues, which is why mental health and well-being now is such a huge focus for us and the other emergency services and the armed forces, because of the nature of the job. It's not always pleasant, so we need to look after our people, and we need to put provisions and resources in place to make sure that their mental health and well-being is as good as it can be. You know, we all know that, you know, the strap lines of it's good to talk and things like that, but we have learned over time that you need to process, because you will build up a bank of memories that can be harmful, but it's about how you process that. Once upon a time we weren't so good at that, but we're now much better at that, and that starts as a recruit now, that whole process. So you're much better looked after these days.
For sure. Okay. Well, I can see there's a number of really good questions that are coming in already, but I'm going to save them towards the end. So if you've got any questions that you want to ask James, if you're watching this live at the moment, do submit them. The questions tab on your dashboard opens out. Text box, type it in there. It comes through. It's only visible to me. So I'm going to come on to those questions, James, very shortly. There's one particularly cheeky question in there, which I'm looking forward to getting your answer for, but we'll see that in a minute. What I want to find out first, though, is the routes into, or specifically in Hertfordshire's Fire and Rescue Service. So how old do you have to be to apply to join the Fire and Rescue Service, first of all?
The minimum of 18. I don't believe that's changed. I can't see that changing. So yeah, you need to be 18, and you need to you know, focus on your GCSEs first and foremost, or the equivalents, whatever you're doing. Get your maths and your English, and you know, bit of life experience is always good to have. You know, so we don't just take. In fact, sometimes it stands people in good stead if they're not coming straight from school or whatever, because you know, you could argue how much life experience you picked up at that stage, but everyone's different. And you know, there was certainly on my course, there was a couple of 18-year-olds that were absolutely spot on, and you know, probably better than some of us older ones. But so a bit of life experience doesn't hurt. So it doesn't matter if you've come from any other walk of life, or if you've had another career or another job beforehand. It's all, you know, take out what you know, what did you get from that? What makes you stand out from the next candidate? You know, because you got to remember this profession is still highly competitive to get into, and will always be a popular option for a lot of people. So there's a lot of competition trying to get in. So what makes you different to the person whose application sits next to yours? You've got to be thinking along those lines. What value are you bringing? What experiences are you bringing? What do you offer? Because what you tend to get is you get a lot of good candidates, and it's very difficult to differentiate between them. And I've been involved in this process at times during the selection process. The caliber of people coming through, they're all quite similar, all very good, high standards. So, you know, what makes you unique? What are you bringing to the party? What makes you different to the person next to you? Like I said, I go back to what I said before, we're all unique and we all bring something different. So what is the different that you're bringing to the party that makes me want to recruit you more than the next person? So you've probably heard of things like PQAs, personal qualities and attributes. What are your personal qualities and attributes? What stands you above someone else that is equally as qualified, has done some equally brilliant things in their life like you have? What stands you above them? You've got to be thinking along those, you know, sell yourselves.
Yeah. So from a subject perspective, you said having English and maths at GCSE is important, and that's a prerequisite. But can you just give a couple of examples of where actually having some fundamental maths and English skills are useful in the job on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, of course. So you'll learn as a recruit very early on, actually, that there's quite a bit of maths involved. For example, we have to work out hydraulic equations for, you know, we call it pressure and head, and frictional loss of the water in the hoses, and how many hoses we're going to need to create a water relay to get water to the fire ground. We have to equate how many foam barrels we might need for a fire of a certain size. So maths is in everything. And I'll be honest, maths isn't my strong point. It's not something that I ever enjoyed at school. But you need to have a grasp, certainly a basic grasp of it. You know, and English, it is what it is. You know, we all need to be able to communicate effectively as much as we can, and follow instructions is probably the most important thing. Following instructions, we need to be able to follow instructions and be able to read them and understand them, and which is why also we checked during the sort of selection process people's sort of abstract reasoning and things like that, because also it's an ability to think outside of the box. You know, have you got that sort of inquisitive analytical mind and things like that? And again, one person might be an absolute mathematics genius but have no common sense. you know. So don't always think that there's a one size fits all. There's not. You'll always offer something. Don't ever think you haven't got something to bring to the party. You just need to think what that is.
Yeah. Okay. Just a question around diversity. I guess traditionally this was a very male orientated role, but what sort of steps are in place now, and are you seeing this being a career that's more attractive to females to get into as well?
Yeah, definitely. People, like I said before, from all walks of life, you know, sexes, races, religions, a wealth of different people experiences only adds to the sort of the wealth of knowledge of any team. It enhances teams because it allows you to think outside the box more and consider other perspectives that perhaps you wouldn't have done otherwise if you were just one group of people. So over the years, we have proactively looked to increase our representation in underrepresented groups quite successfully, I'd like to think. You know, we want to mirror our communities, and our communities are full of all different sorts of people, and that's how we try and you know, picture ourselves. And you know we're working towards that, but we're making great strides forwards. And yeah, you know, looking at I saw a recruit squad run past me today at training centre, and all sorts of different people, you know. So yeah, I don't think it should be seen as that sort of male dominated environment anymore. It's probably still leans a bit towards that, but I'd like to think that the barriers have been removed, or the perception of barriers that were there before are now not there, and we've worked quite hard to eradicate those to create a playing field for everyone.
Right. No, you went to university, didn't you? I think before you'd actually got you knew completely that firefighting was the area you're going to go down. You essentially before that, although your degree wasn't essential, you've actually found it quite useful. So would you discourage anyone if they knew they wanted to go into the fire and rescue service not to at 18 to go to university?
Of course not, because anything you do like that brings life experience, and it enriches, you know, the experiences that you've had, and it develops you as a person. So, you know, you'll have taken something from that. Even if you haven't learned anything from your specific course, you'll have picked up life experiences just from being with other people at university and experiencing that life. You know, it's not all about what you've read in books and what you've learned. It's about having that experience. You develop as a person, and you learn to get along with people. And so, you know, yes, I didn't need a degree, but I'm glad I did it. And actually, now that, you know, fast forward quite a number of years, and I'm in management nowadays, actually my degree is a lot more relevant, because we're expected, when you sort of get into management, you know, people start actually looking to do degrees and things like that. So because I've already done that, so I'm lucky. And there's other courses that we're always there's always lots and lots of courses on offer if you're someone that likes to develop yourself. And I'm someone that tries to take advantage of that. We're always learning. You know, every day's a school day, they say, and it's true. So yeah, again, I go back to saying there's no one size fits all. So if you're thinking of going to university but you're worried that that's going to take sort of 3-4 years out of your time span before you can potentially join the fire service, I'd say do it. It's not a bad thing. And it might give you a qualification that makes you change. You might change your mind in that time. You might want to go down another avenue, and that you know, that's equally fine. So don't you know, it's about we say taking the blinkers off and broadening those horizons, and you know, thinking of the bigger picture. These are all sort of typical fire service slogans, but they apply to lots of areas of life.
Sure. Now, we're of course not going to endorse anyone going in and playing with smoke alarms at school and being curious, climbing up trees, but are there experiences that young people at school could gain that would help them get a bit of an insight into what a career in the fire and rescue service would be like, or whether they've got the right sorts of skills or qualities?
Yeah, certainly. So, and actually, even linking into that, the university and college question from before, you know, there wasn't when I was younger, but nowadays there's actually specific like public sector courses and uniform services courses and things like that, and which are tailored all around, you know, learning about the emergency services and the military and things like that. And those things are really beneficial because you're normally getting taught by a lecturer who has served in some capacity in one of those areas and knows about the, you know, it is a certain life, you know, a disciplined uniformed service, it is a certain life, but you know, you're not expected to turn up on day one and fit that mold straight away. You know, you will get shaped into that, and it's all about the teamwork. You know, I remember being a recruit when I was young. If one person needed to go to the toilet, we all went to the toilet, and we used to think it was crazy, but we soon learned that there was method in the madness. There was method in the madness, and then I became an instructor years later, and you know, I was applying these same techniques. It's about bringing people together. You can't be an island. You can't work on your own. It's all about that team ethic. But I would encourage people, if they're interested in joining the fire service, you know, go along to your local station. They will welcome you. They won't turn you away. They won't think you're a nuisance. They may have to find a beneficial time when you can come down, but they would welcome it. And actually, it shows you've got a bit about you. If you're willing to go down to your station and say, excuse me, I'm interested in joining the fire service. Is there anything I can try out here? They've been more than happy to. We've done it so many times over the years, and I've always enjoyed it. And taking youngsters onto station and showing them, you know, a BA mask, how to roll, the technique for rolling hose, you know, whatever it may be, because what that does is it takes a little bit of the fear of the unknown away. So if you do start going through the recruitment process, it's not the first time you've seen some of these things, and it won't seem so daunting. So do yourself a favour and go down to your local station and ask if there's anything you can try or get involved in. I'm sure you'll get welcomed.
Yeah, I mean, that's really good advice, and I think it's really comforting to know that. And I think as an industry, that's something that the Fire and Rescue Service does really well, that you do really want to reach out to that next generation of your workforce. And so just looking at where we've got people watching live from at the moment, some from Bishop Stortford, from Kings Langley, from Hoddesdon, so they're all going to have a fire station either within the town or you know, not very far away. So your advice, James, is very much go down there and kind of say hello and introduce yourself. And
yeah, and yeah, certainly. So most towns will have a fire station, but not all of our fire stations are what we call whole time stations. So some stations, sort of sometimes out in the villages and things like that. You mentioned Kings Langley and Hoddesdon there. They've got what we call on-call stations, and that's where. So you've got two types of firefighters. You've got two types of contract, I should say. One will be a whole-time career firefighter. That's all they do. And then you've got on-call firefighters who they have what's called an alerter, like a pager, and they will tend to have regular jobs, whatever they may be, out in the community. And then when their alerter goes off, they respond to the station within a few minutes, and they go out and answer a call. So obviously they've got understanding employers, but a lot of employers these days really sort of see the benefits of that for the community, and they welcome it. So they're, you know, if people are a little bit unsure, and we've had this so many times, people are a little bit unsure if they want to join whole time and do it as a career. You know, they start another job or another career first, and they almost do it on the side, if you like, as an on-call firefighter. It's almost a little bit try before you buy, and then we've got a high percentage of previously on-call firefighters who then join the whole time because they love it. So that, you know, that speaks volumes. So yeah, and actually, you know, every respect to on-call firefighters, because not only do they have to do sort of the whole same level of training, but it's over almost a longer period because they can only do it in sections, because otherwise your employer's got to release you for weeks at a time. So they do it in sort of chunks, and trying to, you know, juggle family life and work life at the same time, as well as your day job. It's hats off to these people. It's a real undertaking, and they're real pillars of their communities that serve in their local on-call stations.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, I've had a couple more questions coming, so I want to get them really quickly. Just before I do, the last section that I wanted to run through with you now is just a bit of an understanding about whether this is an occupation that there's going to be demand for in the future. So actually people watching this now know that there's going to be jobs in the future. So firstly, is there demand for firefighters, specifically within Hertfordshire, and do we think there's going to continue to be? And secondly, typically what might be the sorts of roles that someone might go on to having been in the fire service, or like you, James, is that progression route that will take you through sort of 22 years where you can evolve your career as you go on?
Yeah, so the first question, there'll always be a demand. There'll always be a need for the fire and rescue service. You know, we can't get away from the fact that you see on the news and things like that, and the economical climate, there's always going to be cuts to public services. That's inevitable to a degree, and we just hope that they're not as, they're not that bad. But we live alongside issues like that. We just have to crack on with it. There will always be a demand for the fire and rescue service. Our people are our strength. They're so multi-skilled. That's why the name developed to fire and rescue. They are multi-skilled professionals in so many areas. And a lot of other emergency services and things like that, when they don't know who can deal with something, it's generally the fire service that gets called. We are, like I say, we're jack of all trades, and we have this sort of can-do attitude, and we can, innovate and overcome most obstacles. So we get called to do so many different types of incidents and things that you wouldn't ordinarily sort of associate with the fire and rescue service. So there will always be a need for firefighters, and as time has moved on and evolved, our trauma and first aid skills and things like that, and life-saving skills are sort of right up there with ambulance staff now. So and when the ambulance are struggling through no fault of their own because of demand, essentially, that we are called upon a lot to assist other agencies as well. So it's not just our own incidents. We have to, we do a lot of medical calls now. That is just the nature of things. Second question, what sort of jobs can you go into? Well, again, leading on from what I just said, you're a multi-skilled professional in the fire service. You have the opportunity to learn so many things that people in normal walks of life won't, that actually you become a real attraction for lots of employers. If you could elect to have your whole career in the fire service, or you might just choose to do a few years and then move on to something else. Everyone has their own life plan, if you like, or we don't, and we just sort of we're ad hoc and we sort of do things without planning, and that's fine. But if you do move on, you're an attractive proposition for any employer, and I think that's, there's a lot of employers that's recognised by employers now, because there's lots of schemes now where people come directly out of the military, and actually employers are headhunting those sorts of people. They want those sorts of people because they know the skills they bring. They know, and you're good under pressure. There's so many, you can work under pressure in a hostile and upsetting environment. These are life skills that you don't really, you take them for granted because you do them daily, but you build this up over a number of years, and you just take them for granted that you're working in those sorts of stressful environments every day. Not many people do that. So you must never underestimate your value and your worth to any industry who recognise those skills.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you. Let me come into the questions then that have been submitted, some of which we may have answered, so I may not ask these sort of verbatim as they've come in. But first of all, really good question. What motivates you to go out there every day? I guess A, for yourself, and B, for your colleagues.
Yeah, exactly. You just sort of hit the nail on the head. I do it because I still, regardless of the stresses that come with any job, not just the fire service, regardless of the stresses that come with a job and things going on, I still like to think that I can make a difference. I still think I have value to add. I recognise my worth. I have lots of skills that others don't. And I like to think I make a difference. So that's what motivates me, as well as the more intrinsic things. I have a family to provide for. I have to work. I'm not, I haven't won the lottery. So, and even if I did, I've often considered, people say if you won the lottery, I probably would still carry on. So, yeah, intrinsic values. I do it for. I have a family to support. I want to make my son and my family proud. Yeah, and that's it really. I still have a lot of pride in what I do, despite some of the, despite it having affected my mental health, and sometimes, I think I can't wait for retirement. But then I look at what I do sometimes, and I think I'm really privileged.
Sure. Okay, no, that's a good answer, and I think that probably covers the other question that came in about what are the benefits of being a firefighter. I think you've articulated that really well. I mean, just on benefits, because it is an important thing to consider, maybe not the most important, but salary-wise, is it a competitive salary compared to maybe the other emergency services? Is there?
Yeah, I'd say it's on a par with the other emergency services are, I guess. I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew what a firefighter starts on nowadays, because it's changed from when I was a firefighter. I'm now a station commander, so I don't actually know what a firefighter gets. I've got a rough idea, but I don't want to give you the wrong answer. But it's not too bad. It's it's okay, and obviously you can improve upon that the higher up you go. If you elect to become a junior officer and then go beyond that into sort of middle and senior management, there's more money to be had there. But do you go into the fire service looking to be rich? No, I'd have to say no. I think that's obvious. If you want to do that, you'd be looking at something. If money is your goal and your drive, then you'd be looking at something else. But I don't think you'd be on this call perhaps if you were that way inclined. So if you're looking to join to get rich, you're barking up the wrong tree. But it pays okay. It could always pay more, couldn't it? Everything could always pay more.
Absolutely. A couple of questions here, just asking for clarification on qualifications or GCSE. So as far as you're concerned, it's maths and English at GCSE, but there's no other particular there's no other qualifications as a prerequisite to joining that you're aware of?
So there are certain things that you mustn't have. So for example, they will check your background. So, if there's any sort of criminal activity there, you need to disclose that. But in terms of qualifications, there's not set qualifications that you must have. Apologies, there's a loud motorbike outside. No set qualifications you have to have other than having GCSEs. I'd have to double check exactly how many. I don't know if it's specified how many GCSEs you must have, but I know maths and English is important. But if you haven't got maths and English, there are things that could be done whereby you can sort of, arrange to retake those specifically and things like that. So always, what I would suggest is, and you're probably going to put some links up, but if you go onto the council website and you look up fire and rescue and you look up recruitment and you follow the natural links on the websites, it will tell you the prerequisites for joining, and there is lots of information there, and as well as our own internal information, there are sort of national resources. I can see you've put up at fireservice.co.uk. That's just a general resource about the fire service in general around the country, and sort of what they're looking for, the sort of qualities and attributes, day-to-day life, that sort of stuff. So that might be a useful resource. But again, if you're unsure and you're really serious about it and you want to look further into it, contact us, contact the council. We're in Hertfordshire, we're part of the county council, so go through the recruitment pages. There's contact emails and numbers in there, and you'll get through to people that can tell you exactly what you need. Things do change every now and then, so I don't want to give you something, say something specific, and then your audience goes away and only does certain exams, and in a year's time it changes. So always make sure you're updated with the latest. But the latest information is always available on our web pages.
Yeah, so I'm going to leave this screen up for a while. So there's QR codes. They're to take you through to the fireservice.co.uk, which is a really good website. I've got it on my other screen at the moment. That'll give you lots of really good general advice. And then we've also got a QR code that would take you directly through to Hertfordshire's Fire and Rescue Services site with on HCC, and there's some really good information on there as well. Another question that's come in here: have you ever taken a prank or fake call, and what are the implications of that?
Yeah, so it's something we try and clamp down upon. We call them hoax calls, and yeah, I've had hundreds. It's an issue that, you know, but as technology has moved on, our control center, like I said, that's based here. They can triangulate phone signals now. So if anyone's caught, you're in a lot of trouble. So I would advise anyone that thinks that might be funny not to, and for the very basic fact that, and actually I've experienced this. We got called once years ago to a made up incident. It didn't exist. We were looking for it. It didn't exist. It drew both of our appliances away from the fire appliances away from the station and away from the area, and then we had a real life-saving need at an incident on the other side of town. So that's put someone's life in danger. That's the long and short of it. That's the result. That's the net result of that sort of stupidness.
Yeah.
That's not to say to differentiate between people that are unsure, you know, something, perhaps their chip pan caught on fire, they've managed to put it out or whatever, but now they're not sure if they should call the fire brigade. Yes, you should. That's a genuine concern. So if you've got any genuine, what I would say is anything that's genuine, even if the fire's now out, still call us to come and check. That's what we're there for. We'd rather that and make sure it's safe and it hasn't spread and you're okay. That's not what we consider. That's not what we consider a hoax call. A hoax call is calling us deliberately to something that doesn't exist. But you can get in a lot of trouble for that, and they can easily find you now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you're slightly in the hands of the operators who handle the initial call, who I'm sure are very well trained, but I'm sure there are some calls that you go to and you think, okay, well, maybe we need to be here, but maybe it doesn't feel like the best use of all 6 of us and an engine being here today.
Yeah, of course, and that, yeah, over the years we've been to some calls where, you know, arguably we shouldn't have been called to it, but again, everyone's different, and people will panic. And so, you know, it's about tolerance, isn't it? One person's perception of risk will be different to someone else's, and you know, and actually, I'd rather be if you know, if it's an elderly resident who has got worried about something, you know, we've turned up and actually there's nothing wrong, but we're giving them the assurance with our presence. You know, I'd rather do that than not, you know. So, you know, we all know what we call a Mickey call or a hoax call is. They're the ones we want to eradicate, not people with genuine concerns.
Sure, and I don't want to play down the significance of this, but there is a question that's coming that I'm sure you fielded many times before. How many cats have you rescued from trees?
Well, put it this way, and I have been asked this obviously many times over the years. You never see a skeleton of a cat up a tree. Just consider that. They always come down. Eventually, they always come down. But that's not to say we won't go and get them out. We will, but technically speaking, it should be the RSPCA. It's only if the RSPCA can't or don't have the means that we will potentially intervene. But it's not a hard and fast rule that we will. But with things like that, it sounds like it's funny, you know, thinking about it, but we don't want people putting themselves at risk. So if we think people are going to put themselves at risk, sometimes we will intervene deliberately to avoid members of the public putting themselves in harm's way, because it's by us. And sometimes people will see that as a waste of time and resources, but actually, if you think of the bigger picture, if we haven't stepped in and done something, and members of the public are potentially going to call upon themselves to do it and put themselves in danger, that's, you know, and we can see that bigger picture sometimes, so we do sometimes intervene. But yeah, I've had a few cats out of trees, but yeah, it's sort of a cat.
Again, the flip side of that, good question. What's the most dangerous situation you've personally been involved in?
So there's been a few over the years. I mean, going into any kind of burning building is inherently risky, and I've been in quite a few of them. I would also say, though, that is, and it sounds perhaps a bit irresponsible to say it, but it's the truth. You know, that's the most exciting as well, because you join up wanting to do that, don't you? It's only natural that you want to be able to use your training. So actually, when you are sort of, you know, younger and a bit more gung-ho, you know, I'm a bit on the older side now, but you want, the more dangerous the incident, the more your adrenaline's going, and you actually want that dangerous situation. But I did, because you kind of feed off that, the energy and the adrenaline. It's addictive, and you're so highly trained to deal with these emergency situations, but then there's so few opportunities to use your skills. So when you do get an opportunity in a real sort of big or dangerous job, you relish it. But I would also temper that with, be careful what you wish for, because there's been quite a few incidents I've been to over the years that have also, you know, psychologically caused me a lot of harm looking back on it. But you take the rough with the smooth, you know.
Sure. Okay. Well, look, I think that probably covers all the questions that we've had in. You've answered questions so well today, James, and you've given such valuable insights into careers within the fire and rescue service here, that anyone watching, whether they're watching it live right now or whether they're watching it back on YouTube, will have gained so much out of this one, and, you know, hopefully it will inspire you know, another generation to be applying for careers within the fire and rescue service within Hertfordshire. So just in closing, I just want to remind all of you that are watching at the moment, do have a look at our HOP channels. It is a careers website that's designed specifically for young people in schools and colleges in Hertfordshire to gain some careers insight. This is, I think, the 56th of these careers webinars that we've run over the last couple of years. So if you have a look at the QR code on your screen now, that will take you through to our library of virtual webinars. You may well find out there are other careers that you're interested in doing. So I've got a couple of related ones. We've covered careers within the police service fairly recently. So do have a look at them. There may be something that you or one of your friends wants to have a look at. If I could thank all of you that have attended live today, say come home from school, logged onto the webinar and submitted some really, really good and thoughtful questions as well. But most particularly, I want to thank James for giving up his time in preparation for this call and for sharing his experiences in what is no doubt a busy day for him as well. So James, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and hopefully someone watching this today will be working with you and as part of your teams within Hertfordshire's Fire and Rescue Service in the coming years.
Yeah, no doubt. And if anyone is interested in joining the Fire and Rescue Service, best of luck to you. Just be the best version of you.
And that's a really good note to go out on. So thank you so much, James. Have a pleasant evening, and best of luck with your career and with the rest of you watching with your future careers.